The views expressed here are those of the authors and do not in any way represent the views of Sophia TV.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another edition of Ladies First. I'm joined here by my panelists Fahmida, Sumaya, Nishat and myself. So my question to you ladies is, redefining family and community. Do blended families and communities actually work, and should there be more examples of blended families? What I mean by this is having members of different cultural and ethnic backgrounds getting married, and does a family necessarily need to have a mum and dad? What is the new terminology of family, and do blended families work? Any experiences with that?
I think as a communities, not all communities, but there are certain communities that are very racist and discriminating, and that is why they stick to their own kind, or on race, or on type.
Are we talking about Muslim families, or are we talking about generally?
Muslim families. Muslim families. However, I feel that that is not what our imams have taught us. We have seen, our imams are from all backgrounds who have married women from totally different backgrounds. So, if they were Arabic speaking, the woman might not have been Arabic speaking at all, or if they were Arab and she was a black woman, for example. But I think we're very restrictive in the way we choose our spouses.
I feel that if we do even go out to find a spouse, it's only going to be, as she said, in our own culture or in our own community. But even if someone does decide to marry someone from outside their race or different culture altogether, I think if you come with the mentality that, I'm going to change the girl and she will have to adapt to our culture and our style of living and our lifestyle, then it's not going to work. But if you have the mentality that, it'll be accepting and, we can learn from one another, I think it could work.
Okay. I have a completely different point of view. I think marrying within your own culture sometimes has really, really huge and really positive benefits and makes lives easier for both parties, husband and wife, and their respective families. Sometimes you don't realise how much you belong to your culture until you move away from it.
So what are the advantages of a mixed race or blended family?
There aren't any.
I think the children will grow up to embrace differences. Learn a new culture, maybe a new language.
Do you have to be married to somebody like that to be able to do that?
No, but then it's first-hand experience. You know what I mean? They're in your house.
So I think coming from a very blended family, and I'm very happy to be from that because I can't imagine being anything else. It's been a wonderful experience in that I have been able to learn all different, and it's not just my immediate family, my extended family are extremely mixed as well, and it's just how it happened. Obviously there are family members that stayed with certain ethnic groups, but it didn't matter at the time as to what colour you were. Do you have the same philosophies? Do you have the same vision? And I think in my life, and I've continued that, my son is extremely mixed, comes from a mixed heritage. I think it's given him so much because he can take positive parts of every culture, and I think he's more worldly. So then when we travel, he can see differences, and he can see the negative things of how people react to him if he looks different. And I think you do develop a thick skin, because when I walk into situations or centres or communities, they don't know what languages I speak. And I actually like that, because if you're talking about me, I will reply right back in the language that you were speaking. And I think it's important. We're living in a very multinational community, and I think, again, in the Shia community, we are very isolated. We don't step out. And I think when you're from a blended family, it takes away the fear. You're not scared to talk to anybody. your experiences tell you that you are going to accept me the way I am most of the time, and I'm okay with that. If you have an issue with it, then we'll talk about it. But for me, it's been completely positive. Yes, there are situations in every culture that you have to learn. But I have to learn that if I go to a Turkish mosque, for example, what are your etiquettes? They might be different from an Iranian masjid, for example. But it's all about learning, and I think it's given me so much because I'm aware of different lifestyle choices. I'm aware of different customs. I think I know when to pipe up, when to pipe down, when to aim high, when to aim low. From my experience, it's been absolutely positive.
I agree with you partially. You're saying that the experiences it has given your son and how your son is perceived and perceived
myself,
things, and yourself as well. I totally agree with it. However, but it's not going to say that a person who is not very from a blended family be given the same opportunities or having
no, it doesn't. But what it does tell you is that the experiences that I'm going to bring to the table, like with us here, we're all from different backgrounds and ethnicities, example, is something that will add to the community and that will add to the discussion, rather than if we're all from the same economic group, same culture, same thing. Go ahead, Fahmi, you might have a different viewpoint.
It's funny that you mentioned about your child being from a mixed cultural heritage. Mine are from a very mixed cultural heritage, but I can already say that they have a preference for one culture over another, and they feel more comfortable in one over another. I don't want to specify which, but it's just something that's coming more and more to light because of the differences in those cultures. And one they happen to be more comfortable in. And someone told me when I was in my teens that as you get older, you will start making friends more within your own ethnic group. Sometimes that can happen. It can happen because you're more comfortable. I often feel like with my because I'm South Asian, with my South Asian friends, there's just this understanding.
I believe that is right, and
it's so
to some
pleasant.
extent it's right. You make your own choices, what sort of lifestyle you want to live, what sort of culture you want to be, your values, all of that, your experiences and stuff. But I'm not from a blended community or family. But I have interacted as a child. I grew up in a Lebanese school. They were in Nigeria, so it's an African Muslim country. There were all types of ethnicities and cultures as my classmates. So they were Korean, American, Indian, Pakistanis, and I grew up in that environment, and I feel that has impacted my life in a very positive way because I have a more broader perspective now to see and look at the world, and it is just really, I think it was actually a positive reinforcement.
Having lived in a country like that and exposed to so many different cultures, if you had continued to live there and there was a marriage proposal for you from a different culture, do you think your parents or you would be as open to it?
I can talk about myself. So I believe I would not look at the guy's skin of color, the color of the skin. I would not look at what background he is from, what sort of culture. I would actually look at the boy itself, his values. Are they, the same as I, what does he feel about family,
Also do a background check on the families as well when
you're
marrying
that is
someone.
exactly what would be important, not what sort of race they're from. That's not what would be
But hold on,
important.
that's not always possible in life. With my mother, she was Iranian. She married someone who was Egyptian German, who was living in Iran on work. So it wasn't possible to make a phone call back in the 70s to like, hello, what is your last name? Can I come over to... But through his actions, and because he lived in the country and, back in Iran, they'll ask the baker, how does he pick up his bread, or for God's sake, stuff like that. They developed, an understanding of the person. And what I'm saying is, we're talking about the 70s. We're not talking about now where, you walk in the street and it's blended and it's lovely and it's fashionable. I remember when I was very young, everyone would look at me and call me the beautiful doll because I looked different. I'm like, what is this? But you can speak this, that, and the other language. So I really think it's we pick up on what has been taught in our environment, and I think for her parents to take that risk.
Despite that, there are mosques that
It's huge.
arrange when children get to the age of marriage, they want to arrange seminars and gatherings for these kids so that they don't go outside of their race and culture to
Well, I think
find
that's
their
very
spouse.
sad.
Why is that happening?
Well,
Because are we still
it could be seen as sad, but it could be seen as a very positive thing.
Exactly.
Maya, you mentioned that I wouldn't care about the boy's race or culture because I'd only care about his values, but his values do come from his race and culture. There is an element of that in there. So when you are seeking a spouse, take a comprehensive view, really.
If you're a Muslim and you're from, I don't know, Papua New Guinea and you're a Shia, what are your values? Does he share them with, say, Sumaya, for example? And what is the evidence of that? Not the fact that he's from Papua New Guinea. I mean, there's pros and cons everywhere.
I feel that I'm not going to look at exactly what country, or I would look at, okay, do our values match, if if I want to stay, religiously as well,
Exactly, just
where are we
matches.
at? If I want to take hijab and he would be like, okay, you know what, in my culture it's looked down upon, then obviously I would not go for someone like that.
Are we like, it's just coming to my head, are we like Save the Whales or something? So, we must all stay with whales and not go with porpoises or whatever, because, our culture might die out. What are we so scared of? That, my God, we might have spaghetti on Friday and not, roti canais. I mean,
I'm a bit
what
confused
is
about
this?
this.
No, I'm talking about Singaporean roti canais.
I'm a bit confused because growing up, I have heard where Marjas encourage people to use their mother tongue at home because you don't want to lose your culture. And I don't think
Be bilingual. What's the
but
problem?
I don't
Actually,
think
that's a really good thing. If a child can learn a lot of language.
Yeah.
What's
if
the
you do
problem?
no, I know. I'm not saying that they shouldn't. What
Yeah.
I'm saying is that they encourage their mother tongue to be used more than they use other languages. However, the confusion is that if we're encouraged to do certain things like this,
Yes,
we're encouraging our culture to remain. And
Remain? Are we
yeah,
gonna
but that's
become
what I'm saying.
fossils?
No, but if we're going
But
to
it
be
gets
marrying outside of
diluted.
culture, I
What's
think
wrong
yes,
with that? As human beings, we've been diluted. We crossed Africa and went into India, and we went, the continents
it was the other way
moved.
around, by the way.
Well, you know what I mean. But the continents move. I'm not saying, okay, you can have preferences, that's fine. But what I'm saying is we need to come out of this, there's going to be a storm, and if we mix, it's going to be detrimental. You can keep your culture and be in a blended family. Like,
I think
have-
it's more difficult than when
It
is. Yeah.
is difficult.
It's scary.
But it's not impossible.
leaving your culture.
I think there's both aspects. Like I said, the imams did it, yet we're told to be, cultural centered and stick to our own. And yeah.
Yeah.
do you know what? I feel quite sad
It's a
after
bit
this
confusing.
discussion. I think
Well,
it's
I'm being honest. And
No,
and
honesty
I really
is
feel
great.
That it going outside of my culture, it's really funny because as a teenager, I completely rebelled against my culture. I wouldn't even wear like Indian dresses.
we all do that.
We all
at
do.
some
And now
point.
it's like I've come full circle, and I really appreciate aspects of my culture, especially because I've lived in other countries as well. But each to their own. I guess it's
Horses for courses, I guess.
absolutely.
So we could talk about this for another 5 episodes, inshallah. Well, I hope you will go out there and explore what works for you, inshallah. Now I would like to go to the one-to-one discussion with Sister Masuma Jaffer. My favourite part of the show, speaking to Sister Masuma Jaffer on our one-to-one discussion. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Another question that I have for you. I wanted to speak about blended families. Do you think we have enough of them in the community in terms of interracial marriages? And have the traditional sense of family changed?
I think there is more interracial marriages nowadays as the culture's diluting. I think, before it was something that because your culture identified who you were, it was very difficult for you then to marry into another culture. Whereas now I think sort of living in the West, you've taken on the British culture and things like that. So I think it is changing.
but I don't really see it. I've
No?
seen, well, how many have I seen? I mean, when I speak about blended families, I'm referring to, say, black and white or pink and blue or other colours available. But I'm surprised, because in the Sunni community, it's quite common, it's quite natural. It's like almost when you become Muslim, the door is flung wide open most of the
You
time.
don't feel it is within the Shia world?
I haven't seen it. I really haven't.
In the doors being flung open, or the actual marriage prospects?
The marriage. It's
Okay.
We can talk to you and have dinner and be friends, but when it comes to marriage, I don't think you fit in. But maybe it has, and if it has, you can tell me more.
I feel that it has more now. I mean, we've still got a long way to go, and it's something that I think each individual obviously has to decide. I don't think it's a racial problem as such. I think it's with the younger generation, with the new generation. I think it's more to do with how much am I willing, you know, how important is my culture to me? Because obviously, you know, you'd have to sort of give in into cultures and things like that. You know, there'd be a lot of sort of compromises and things happening. So, you know, you need to sort of, again, self-evaluate yourself and see whether you're able to do that and everything. I mean, I find that kids who are brought up here prefer to marry someone who's been brought up here, even if it's not from the same culture, rather than marrying from the same culture who's been brought up back home, because the mindset is just so different.
I understand.
So I don't think there's a problem with sort of...
You know what surprises me? Maybe I'm just too out there, but I don't know of any scholars, well, not that you often see their wives or vice versa, the scholar who's a female, obviously he's married to a man. I don't see them being an example of blended families. But when you go historically in Islam, you see there's a lot of, you know, intermarriages between cultures and communities. Why do you think that is? I mean, they're heads of our community. I'm sure they would want to continue that tradition.
No, for sure. I don't think it's something that they've done consciously. I think being scholars, they're probably, you know, spent so much time studying and, you know, then, you know, giving lectures and being there for the community that, you know, when a proposal is, you know, sort of brought to them, if they feel that this person has what they're looking for, then they would go ahead with it. I don't think they'd sort of, you know, a lot of the times usually you'd meet someone maybe at uni who was of a different culture or a different, whereas, you know, with the scholars, maybe because they're so in their own sort of little world with their studies and so forth, that they would just take the easy route and just marry someone within their own culture.
So do you think parents are more open-minded now, or is it the next generation who are more open to it?
I think our generation are open-minded. I think maybe my parents, my grandparents for sure would have had a problem with it. I think our children will be even more open-minded. I think it's a work in progress. I think slowly, you know, that acceptance and understanding of Islam and the fact that, you know, all Muslims have equal rights and we're supposed to be brothers in faith, and, you know, we can't think of one culture or one race being better than the other. I think that is an understanding that you have to get to.
You're prominent in the community. I wanted to ask you, what have you seen in terms of remarriages or second marriages or third marriages, whatever, and blended families when it comes to, say, stepchildren, half-children? Has it been a smooth transition for most people? I'm just thinking, because often we say that the children should be with the males. I'm thinking, what have you seen? Is it?
I think it differs depending on each relationship. A lot of the times the father feels that the mother can take care of the children better, and so he gives the children to the mother to take care of, and then sees them, you know, on a regular basis. Sometimes the father wants, because it's his right, he wants the custody of the children, so he has the children. I think maybe to point out the hijab issue.
Yes, I was going to say, could you clarify that? Because I have a friend who's got it backwards and has done for 15 years, but we didn't know. Well, we got the wrong information. So what is the hijab issue with that?
If you have a man coming into a marriage with his own children,
right,
and marrying a woman from a previous marriage, who's got children from a previous marriage, okay, once their marriage is consummated, all those children become mahram to both of them.
Okay.
So his children will become mahram to her, her children will become mahram to him.
Okay.
Although they're not both of their children. Then there will be no hijab issue there at all. But between the children, they will never be mahram to each other. So his daughter and her son,
the daughter has to wear hijab.
Would have to in front of her stepbrother, because there is no blood connection there at all.
Okay, break that down for me again. I'm just so shocked by it.
So say
the daughter, the daughter from the mother's side, for example, doesn't have to wear a hijab in front of the stepfather.
Yes, because the marriage has been consummated. The marriage has to be consummated.
But she has to wear hijab in
front of his son. In
Right.
front of his son, who is her stepbrother. But if they have a child together,
right,
then that child will be mahram to all of them, because they have a parent that they share.
So she doesn't have to wear hijab, obviously.
In front of any of them, because then they've got a parent that they share.
But that's really problematic. Who thinks of that when they remarry, for example? I mean, in terms of the hijab issue, because a lot of the time you think, okay, it's a halal thing and I don't have to.
But there's nothing that connects them on a bloodline. So therefore the hijab has to be there, because there is a possibility that they could get married if they wanted to.
Yes, so the stepbrother and stepsister could get married.
Because there's nothing that connects them in a bloodline.
Okay, that's just blown my mind. So the mother, just to clarify, doesn't have to wear hijab with both the husband's children or her. Yeah, she doesn't have
Obviously,
to wear.
she doesn't have to have front
No, the husband's children.
As long as the marriage is consummated.
Right, but her daughter would need to wear hijab with her stepbrother or half brother. I don't know what it would be. Stepbrother, stepbrother.
Because half brother would mean that they have a parent that they share.
Yeah. What about the grandparents and the uncles and everybody who comes
so again,
on?
Then the same thing works. So if your father is mahram to you, then your grandfather, your great grandfather, and all the blood relatives of your father are mahram to you.
What happens after the people who got married? Just to make it really complicated, the people who got married then got divorced, then what would happen? Then they would continue to wearing...
No, so he would still, because she can never marry him, because once the marriage is consummated, she can never marry, the daughter can never marry her stepfather.
Right.
So he would still be mahram to her, but obviously then the wife would then have to wear hijab once the iddah period was over, if she divorced her husband, like in a normal divorce.
Okay, that's so interesting, because the person I know has done it the other way. She wears hijab and everybody doesn't, but she wears hijab in front of the stepchildren, which has caused huge problems because unintentionally, but she thought she was doing the right thing. So,
but again, it's the hijab thing is it's who you can and who you can't marry. So, for example, God forbid if my husband and I got divorced, I would never have to wear hijab in front of my father-in-law. But I would have to start wearing hijab in front of my husband after the iddah period was over.
I'm just trying to process it. I completely understand now. But I just feel that these things are not covered enough, and you really have to dig deep. With every decision that you make, you need to really go through the,
I mean, the rules are there, but it's a matter of sort of, again, empowering ourselves and actually educating ourselves so that we know exactly what, God wants from us. I think a lot of the times we sort of think logically and think, oh, I'm supposed to do it this way. Or we ask friends.
What about the issue of touching someone who you may be related, for example, cousins after a certain age, or another family member, or even a non-mahram? How does that work? For example, my example, when after I became baligh and stuff, my aunt's husband always liked to pull my cheeks and stuff, like being friendly. My granddad would get really angry because he would say, that's really inappropriate. And he would be like, well, we're still kids, around 9 or whatever. And he didn't understand it. So, sometimes we can get a little bit carried away. Can you clarify?
Again, the ruling is that, if once you become baligh, then the hijab comes into it. And obviously with the physical touching then is not appropriate. You can't do that.
Cousins, male cousins.
Again, male cousins you can marry, but you can marry them. And we have, within our community, there is a lot of cousin marriages happening.
Well, how do you break that news? Because it's almost like you wake up at 12 o'clock at midnight, you're now baligh, everything changes.
I don't think it should be done that drastically. It's the same as, not your daughter not wearing hijab and then all of a sudden on her 9th, again, Islamic birthday, not the Western birthday, because Islamic calendar is about 11 days shorter.
Right.
So you become 9 Islamically well before you become 9 on your English birthday.
I know, you've got to get the calendar out.
There are lots of programs and apps now that you can actually put your English date in, and it gives your Islamic date to you.
Sure enough.
So yeah, but again, I think parents are being very optimistic if they feel that they do, they haven't introduced hijab to their daughter at all. They don't, they haven't talked.
Yeah.
And then at the age of 9, okay, now you have to wear it. It doesn't work like that.
And you can't play with,
Yeah, it's a slow process. I think, you slowly, you have to sort of say, because you're getting older, there has to be a barrier there. You can't sort of play like you used to when you were little. And, and then as they become, older and older, then obviously once they become baligh, then it's okay, now there can't be any physical touch happening.
But how do you explain that to everybody else? Okay, in your household, that's fine. But what about, say, cousins, other family members who may not be, maybe Muslim, but they may not be practicing Muslim or adhere to those things, or even with friends?
Again, I think as parents, if we feel strongly about something and we can see the value in it, then we would do it. It's like, I have friends who are very particular about the diet that their children have. And, even when they drop them off to their parents' house, they will say that there's certain things that child's not allowed to eat. So, for example, giving them sugary or coloured things and everything. And if we can be that strong-willed about things like that, which affect the physical body, why would we not be so strong-willed about something that affects our soul, which is who we are, which will continue on the journey after we leave behind this physical body?
So much to talk about. We need another episode. I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. I look forward to seeing you soon.